Morning, everybody. Day 3 of Edinburgh. It's a party night tonight, new awards tonight, so make sure that you are all having a brilliant time. Okay, so it is a real pleasure for me to invite you to this year's Alternative MacTaggart lecture. This is one of the festival's most anticipated moments, and it's a space where we make sure that we have wit, sharp thinking, and just the right amount of disruption that comes together. So it's an absolute honour, and I don't use that word lightly to introduce this today's speaker, because he is absolutely brilliant, he is blisteringly clever, and he is so truly original. It is, of course, Munya Chawawa. You will know him, of course, from the internet, and although that kind of feels too small a phrase for somebody who has turned digital culture into satirical art form, with over 1 billion views, multiple alter egos, and the rare ability to respond to news faster than news can actually report it, Munya's become one of our most distinctive and fearless voices of this generation. 1 minute he's delivering a viral parody of Matt Hancock dancing through Scandal to It Wasn't Me. The next, the guy is dissecting class and race through Britain, through comedy, music, and a smartphone. And somehow he makes all of this work seamlessly every single time. This guy is brave, he is fearless, and he is absolutely original. But more than that, he's got something which is really rare. He has got a hunger to inform. He's got a hunger to push boundaries, and he gives us something that explodes off the screen, that reverses our assumptions, and he makes us look at the world differently. And that, my friends, is what real talent does. And that, to me, is what self-belief looks like. He's not snobbish about telly, not in what he watches and not in what he makes. He understands that entertainment can be smart, that comedy can be political, that being silly can actually be subversive. And in a moment when so much of our industry can feel slightly cautious, can feel self-protective, Munya is the complete opposite. He is hungry, he is inventive, and he's out to shake things up in the best possible way. And that is why he is the perfect person to deliver this lecture, because Munya sits right at the intersection of digital rebellion and traditional craft. He knows, this guy knows, like most of us in this room, the grind of telly, the edit suites, the endless decks, and the quiet no's. And yet, he's carried on, he's rewritten the rules in real time. He has built his own audience. He's forged his own voice with asking, with humour, and with heart. And this is what our industry could be if we are brave enough to let it evolve. After this lecture, Munya is going to be sitting down with the brilliant Kyle, a conversation I know that we are all looking forward to and which promises to be as thought-provoking and joyful as the speech itself. So please, please, please join me, be upstanding and give a huge welcome to the one and only Munya Chawawa.
I slip, I slide, I don't trip, I glide when I dip, I dive when I dive deep in the middle of her ocean. You know where to find me when it's poetry in motion.
Wow. Thank you so much, Edinburgh. Thank you, Fatima, for that lovely introduction as well. All right, look, let's start things off. First of all, if you've ever seen me on the internet before, give me a little cheer. Okay, if you haven't, I'm just going to say what everyone's thinking. What in the JLS tribute act is happening right now? I look like that one guy on Love Island who cheats in Casa Amor every year. Someone recently said, I look like Lewis Hamilton if he'd never passed his theory test. And that's the last time she's getting a Mother's Day card, man. Okay, well, look, the thing most people know about me is my name is Munya Chawawa, which sounds absolutely mental out loud, I'm totally aware, but it's an African name, which is cool because African names mean something, yeah? So my name, Munya Chawawa, means my parents wanted me to get bullied. So if you think you recognize me from the internet, you are correct. Across the last 7 years, I've built a career from speedy online satire, covering everything from Tory lockdown parties to ChatGPT, Brat Summer to the summer riots by the EDL. You know, and I know people say that the EDL's disbanded and they're never getting back together, but you know, the Spice Girls said that as well. So through a series of parodies, impersonations, and political takedowns and stints as the UK's first post-drill rapper, I've been able to amass over 3 million followers and 1 billion views, which in turn have led to a Rolling Stone front cover, profile pieces in the New York Times, a record deal with Atlantic, and relentless requests to appear on The Masked Singer. However, let's address the elephant in the room, okay? At the mere whiff of the phrase digital, some of you may now be tempted to sit back, a surreptitious grin etching itself across your face. You know what this speech is about. Perhaps you'll even attempt to bash out a sneaky wordle under the table as your mind tries to auto-predict what this speech will be. TikToker with zero industry experience tells telly people how TV is totally over and totally irrelevant. Well, if that's you, firstly, today's wordle is extol, screw you. I saw you reaching. But secondly, your summary is correct, apart from one crucial detail, one tiny secret you may not know, which is I too am a telly person, just like you. My career began in television. Every skill I have was forged in television. And despite having curated a voice and an audience of my own, and having jumped through various hoops set for me by commissioners and execs, I still find myself outside the gates of television waiting to be let in. I, like you, am pained to hear that traditional British TV is in decline. You know, to hear that after surviving the grueling gauntlet of development, series now fizzle out after one night, doomed to an eternity lurking in the dark recesses of BBC iPlayer, ITVX, and whatever Channel 4 is calling theirs now, Foursome, I think. To know that in 2025, meticulously crafted, traditional produced TV shows must come to terms with the fact that the apex of their existence might be as a pixelated repost on TikTok, soundtracked by the Jet2 holiday theme song. Like the horsemen of the apocalypse, the broadsheets bellow out unanimously. Traditional TV is dying. And perhaps most devastatingly, in fact, is the fact that much of it is self-inflicted. In the face of a rapidly changing landscape, British television has ignored evolution. And the same outdated gatekeepers have stuck to the same outdated guns whilst yelling, "Hey guys, remember this one?" Like an out-of-touch dad doing the worm at a day rave. And I know some of you are planning to do that tonight. I'm sorry. British TV isn't dying because of TikTok. It's dying because it's lost its willingness to take risks, to throw caution to the wind, and to gamble on great ideas. And whilst traditional television desperately drunk texts its ex with the promise of nostalgia and reboots of old favourites, the audience swiped through a collection of new hot guys, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, all of whom wallow in the bounty of record viewing figures and retention rates. Adapt or die. I know this is the kind of thing David Attenborough would say just before watching a polar bear maul a baby penguin to death, but if television is to stand a chance, it's time to ditch our national mantra of keep calm and carry on, and instead replace it with something more thrilling like pull your finger out and take a chance. Given it's not the kind of thing that your nan would willingly stitch onto a tea cozy, however, this is a nod to trying something unusual, taking a gamble, reclaiming the risk that traditional television was once defined by. Because that's what this generation is doing online, and I'm not going to lie, they're bloody smashing it. So, Edinburgh, esteemed telly people, penguin or polar bear? And yes, I am fully aware that sounds like a new game show on BBC One hosted by Noel Edmonds, but stick with me now, all right? So, firstly, it's important to note that being brave, being provocative, is something that was once sewn into the DNA of British television. And I know this because my first experience with it was when I was growing up in Zimbabwe. Now, unlike a deprived Rishi Sunak, I grew up with satellite television. Most of which in Zimbabwe, for some inexplicable reason, was Jackie Chan's entire Hollywood catalogue on repeat. And after about the 419th time of watching someone beaten to death by a milk frother, I started to channel hop as a young boy, looking for new thrills. And I stumbled upon a channel called the BBC. It would appear that, for as much colonial ball ache as Britain had put Zimbabwe through, even Robert Mugabe couldn't resist a bit of Strictly. They should have invited him on. They let anyone on these days. So in Zimbabwe, this BBC channel actually played programs from every British broadcaster. And the one playing on that fateful day was an ITV show called Ladette to Lady, where groups of unruly women would go to finishing school in the hope of becoming quintessential British ladies. I just remember I instantly became the show's #1 fan, mainly because the contestants insisted on getting their boobs out, which as a young man I found to be utterly compelling viewing. Moreover, the show felt fresh, mischievous, and risky. Would today's commissioners take a risk on a show like that? Would they risk their ratings on a show like that? I don't know. But it doesn't matter because over on TikTok, William Hanson, a British etiquette coach, delivers daily lessons to over 3 million followers. Online takes a risk, online gets the reward. When the show ended, I was ravenous for the channel's next offering, which turned out to be a Channel 4 show called Faking It. Now, in the show, members of the public would train with a professional for 4 weeks before attempting to hoodwink a panel of experts into thinking they were the real deal. There was no real prize apart from a batshit crazy LinkedIn update. The show was frivolous but immersive, simple but irresistible. Would today's commissioners take that gamble? I don't know. Again, doesn't matter, because over on YouTube, Nico Amalana conducts his version of the show, impersonating Apple employees, IKEA staff, and politicians to over 55 million viewers. Online takes a risk, online gets the reward. As the night drew to a close, I remained welded to the sofa, eyes bulging, ready for whatever madness this mysterious BBC channel decided to belch onto the screen next. And it was a BBC sketch show called Little Britain. Over the next hour, I witnessed 2 men transform themselves into 1 million different characters by switching personalities, outfits, and accents. I'd never seen anything like it. And whilst I may not have understood the implications of some of the things they said and did, I just remember it was nice seeing someone of myself, colour of myself represented on screen. You see how I stuttered? I knew it was risky. The show was outrageous, irreverent, stupid, but iconic. Even so, the commissioner recently told me that there was no appetite for sketch comedy on TV today, on British television, which is weird because the sketch I posted 2 days later hit 20 million views in 48 hours. Online takes a risk, online gets the reward. Nevertheless, as a kid, I hopped off the sofa that day having decided British TV was cool. And despite being so young, I became a loyal viewer across my evenings, weekends, even school holidays, which is such a stark contrast to today's generation, where 16 to 24-year-olds spend an average of 17 minutes a day watching live broadcast. For me, back then, telly was an adventure. It was a chance to hang with the cool kids of entertainment. But for this generation, telly is more of a reluctant visit to an elderly relative who insists on serving up stale hobnobs from an old tin. By the time I hit my 20s, my childhood obsession had turned to a genuine ambition. I wanted to make TV. And I earned my stripes. Started off as a researcher for a show called Obsessive Compulsive Cleaners, where I would be sent out to find hoarders, and on one occasion, narrowly avoided being crushed to death by a falling tower of Enrique Iglesias CDs. Next, it was a VO job on an E4 show called Sex Testers, where I would shout the word gonorrhea into a microphone at varying levels of enthusiasm. And eventually, a producer role on 4 Music, which involved strapping celebs into a pair of electric underwear in a game show called Quiz in My Pants. Jason Derulo hasn't returned to the UK since. Eventually, though, I hit a wall. I had big ideas. I wanted to make distinctive, groundbreaking shows of my own, but every exec, every commissioner, every gatekeeper said the same thing. You're a nobody. You're weird. You don't quite fit into this neat little box we need you to fit into. The first rejection. It's the sentiment that drove me, and no doubt countless others, onto social media. Television's refusal to nurture talent birthed a generation of those determined to teach themselves. We built our own creative playgrounds with zero barrier to entry. Instead of wasting our time and all that early ambition trying to get onto someone else's channel, we could just start our own. It was our own space to refine our voices, to create ideas with no consequence, no limit to imagination. Where telly said no, social media did and does, in big glittering letters, say yes. Several years later, by the end of lockdown, I'd built a profile through relentless Tory bashing. I'd nearly been deported several times, which was pretty Patel's fault, actually. But more than a profile, I had what felt like my own BBC channel, one where I was the commissioner, the compliance team, the researcher, the exec producer, and still, I wanted what TV had. And so, when I was eventually offered a non-scripted series by YouTube, I was intent on creating the platform's first ever TV show. Now, the resulting show was called Race Around Britain. 4 episodes, 30 minutes, a comedy travelogue, which consisted of stunts, sketches, and social experiments to find out what Britain knew about black culture. Now, at the time, racial tensions were high because of the George Floyd protests. And in my mind, the best antidote to that was the unifying power of comedy to bring us together through that time. Now, in the show, we tested contestants' cultural knowledge of foods by doing a spoof cookery show called The Great British Jerk Off, which maybe you won't be able to find online now due to the new online safety bill, but we recreated the pressure of the 2021 Euros penalties for the black players by getting our contributors to take penalties in front of a full brass band, police dogs, and 2 goalkeepers. And most notoriously, we tested the concept of white privilege by getting 3 ladies named Karen and seeing whether they could create a viral drill song in 24 hours. And the next day, the track sat at 1 million views. And we had the streets singing, "Fresh drip from Debenhams, gang in Fiat 500s, revving 'em." What a time to be alive. Race Around Britain was mischievous. It was novel. It was unexpected. And as such, a few months after its release, I was awarded a National Comedy Award for Best New Comedian, RTS, Edinburgh TV and Broadcast Digital Award for Best Presenter, and to our utter amazement, a BAFTA nomination for Best Comedy Entertainment Show. The first time ever that a YouTube show has been nominated for a television BAFTA. I'll give you a chance to applause. We lost. Even the voice break tells you the pain. But shortly before the awards, The Guardian wrote, "The choice between established talent and exciting newcomer is rarely as clear as between one of the all-time greats, Graham Norton, 8 wins in the genre, 5 nominations, and Munya Chawawa, whose super fresh Race Around Britain makes YouTube a serious player. BAFTA probably will and should choose Chawawa." Now, as crushing as it was not to win, we'd done it. We'd made a TV show just like the ones I'd been infatuated with the first time I watched that BBC channel. Now, in my mind, surely, recognizing me as one of their own, traditional TV would welcome me in with open arms, the prodigal son. A year later, across the period of a week, we sat across tables from various commissioners and unveiled our shiny new deck for the sequel, Race Around Europe. To each meeting, we came armed with accolades, viewing figures, and glistening audience insights, along with rigorously prepared small talk, each member equipped with charming anecdotes about the weather and the ability to share presentations from laptop to screen in 0.5 seconds. We were quite literally pitch perfect. And so you can imagine our utter dismay when the following week, all the channels came back with the news that they'd be passing on the series. Oh, it's just a bit risky for us. Yeah, we're looking for something a bit safer. Is there any way you could make it more like The Traitors or Love Island? And perhaps most crucially, it won't connect with our audience. It was a gut punch of colossal proportions, because we brought to the table an idea, industry experience, an audience of over 1 million, and a BAFTA nomination for added bonus, and still the answer was no. That show I just described, and all of its potential died that week. Not because of the quality, but because of the systematic inability for TV gatekeepers to see value outside the bubble of their own familiarity. There was something pitiful about watching commissioners sheltering their old, easily spooked traditional audience so fiercely, like Gollum clasping the ring, afraid that they might see something different, something new. Maybe it wouldn't have worked on your audience, but what about mine? What about the 6 million people who had enjoyed Series 1? Maybe it would not have won over your 60-year-olds, but it would have brought a hell of a lot more 16 to 24s. Traditional British TV was happy to cheer for the show's success, but they certainly weren't going to make it. The whole thing was like a depressing reunion. When I thought back to the BBC, I remembered. It was like a depressing reunion where you realise your mad mate who used to insist on drinking his own piss out of a shoe on a night out now runs a speed awareness course and plays golf at the weekends. TV just wasn't fun anymore. And so like Shrek to a swamp, the following months I returned to my safe space, social media. You know, I knew that scrolling through brain rot was bad for me, but it was also soothing. You know, the same comfort as a greasy kebab after being kicked out the nightclub by a bouncer. And yes, whilst the apps were predominantly mind-numbing memes, curiously, every so often, something I hadn't seen before was starting to crop up. A new type of creator, production savvy, ambitious, unpredictable. For some reason, more and more creators seem to be shifting from the shaky selfie camera rants to carefully composed shots, audio mixed interviews, and repeatable formats. TikTok and its users appeared to be doing their best impression of television. Meanwhile, YouTube, once only confined to search bars, had now made its way onto the home screens of most smart TVs, beckoning in new audiences with its infinite catalogue. Dating shows, cookery shows, property tours, ghost hunts, travelogues, celeb interviews, all self-made, self-funded, oozing with originality. And it was clear that this combination was being rewarded handsomely by viewers. Exploring haunted abandoned millionaire's mansion, 4.8 million views. Craziest ways to make biryani, 9 million views. I slept with 100 men in one day, 11 million views. I'm just reading out the titles of the videos. Could it be that YouTube, something that was once no more than a virtual town square for crazy cat ladies, had now become a serious mainstream contender? The answer came in the form of Squid Game. Now, whatever doubts there were about the internet's ability to outmatch TV were settled when the first series dropped on Netflix. Given Squid Game was a revolutionary Korean language international streamer show, however, it set records for what audiences for high-end drama could reach. After the first season, it sat at a colossal 265 million views. Debate settled. TV wins. Until a few months later, when a YouTuber named Mr. Beast recreated the show on his channel and got 850 million views. The message was clear. Anything you can do, we can do better. And now, present day, evidence supports that theory more than ever. Broadcast reported that YouTube has overtaken ITV to become the second most watched service in UK homes, behind only the BBC. Whilst traditional television attempts to please its diners by serving up the same comfortable family favourites night after night, digital provides an endless, risk-taking taster menu. And it doesn't take a genius to realise competing in this instance is impossible. So this is the crux now. Online is the bogeyman. and it is coming for you. Squeezing your eyes shut and banking on the in-betweeners or friends or Family Guy to bring in ratings isn't going to work. These reruns are nothing more than millennial lullabies that viewers stick on in the background, fall asleep to. They're not viewing figures in as much as they are nostalgic backward glances. To survive, telly has to move forward. Now, after this bit, I can sense that the room is tense. There are more clenched cheeks than the MasterChef Christmas party, in fact. Oh, we kept that one in, did we? Okay. But thankfully, I don't believe it's a case of kill or be killed. And believe me, there are people who want me to say this in the speech, but I don't think that. I actually think the key is meaningful collaboration, okay? Because television has the expertise. You have the experience and the structures to turn internet talent into generational programming. Where creators have passion, TV can sculpt it into ideas and formats. Where creators have ideas, we can bring them into formats. Where creators have formats already, TV can inject budget to elevate them to their full potential. You know, in instances where channels have dipped their toes in this approach, the results have been glowing. Whether it's Poppy Cooks, a food creator who specializes exclusively in cooking potatoes, now being on a regular slot on Saturday Kitchen, or Francis Bourgeois, a guy who literally built a career from strapping a camera to his head and filming trains, now being announced as the host of the Grand Tour, viewers are invested. You know, Netflix has commissioned Inside Series 2, which is essentially a young person's Big Brother, by a YouTube group called The Sidemen, and people are watching it. Audience will follow good ideas and exciting talent, whatever screens they appear on. But even beyond the most immediate choices, TV must task itself with looking for the hidden gems. For instance, I don't know if you guys saw this, the viral teenager who pitched a travel show during his BBC work experience. They said no, and so he and his friends then flew to Somaliland and made the show anyway, and it went viral. And guess what? It's great, but it's not perfect, because recording a series in your bedroom will never be the same as one infused with the resource and know-how of your industry. In this instance, new talent was on a plate, a chance to freshen up a drying pipeline of familiar faces. The channel should absolutely have been fostering that new talent, building the relationship, developing the concept, so that in 5 years' time, perhaps that young, aspirational documentarian is in a position to take the mantle and inject life into a genre we hold so dearly. And a disclaimer, astronomical figures with new talent and new formats might not be immediate. That's just a blunt truth. But it's either television takes a chance and dedicates itself to developing the new generation of talent, or simply clings to its old favorites until they're physically incapable of doing the job. And just ask yourself, do you really want to be watching an 85-year-old Simon Cowell bash his big red buzzer? Because I know I don't. Putting an enthusiastic young person on screen might feel like a risk, but Ant and Dec were first on screen at the age of 13. And where did that get them? 45 NTAs and a long-standing hosting gig where people come face-to-face with a shriveled camel's anus. Or as some people insist on calling him, Nigel Farage. We've got to ask ourselves, if those two retired today, who have we been training to fill their space? Either you're actively building the next generation, or you're beckoning your own extinction. You know, I mentioned earlier, despite everything, I find myself outside the gate still, waiting for permission to create. I have a series, an original scripted comedy, imaginative, unscripted formats that I'm trying to build through traditional means. But after being wheeled out here at Edinburgh, will I be forced again to go through the same sausage factory of channels interested in their risk-averse traditional viewers than in the next generation? And you might think to yourself, look, fine, if digital's killing it, and you creators, you're amassing millions of followers and dollars, why are you still saying yes to TV shows? Why do you want to make TV shows? Why is telly even worth it? Well, I have to quite literally 1 billion views on social media, I rarely meet someone and ask them, have you seen my latest 60-second video? Instead, I'm far more likely to say, did you manage to watch my series, Race Around Britain? Or did you know I have a documentary about Kim Jong-un, which admittedly works less well as a chat-up line. The fact is, television matters, or at least it still matters to me. You know, in an age defined by swipes and fleeting moments on a phone, many of us pine for something more permanent, something that lasts, you know, produced to the highest standard, a craft, a legacy. And there's a world in which the devil-may-care attitude of this new generation could infuse a new generation of unpredictable British TV. But it requires deep, meaningful collaboration, not cameos. In 5 years' time, no one's going to say, oh my God, television was doomed until we put Munya Chawawa on the wheel. Being on a show is not the same as letting us build our own. You've got to trust us. You've got to try us. You've got to champion us. Let's just be real about the state TV's in. Sameness is not exciting. Surviving is not exceeding. Online creators have both the power to obliterate telly, but also simultaneously resuscitate it. Stood before us are two gladiators in the Colosseum of entertainment. You've got the OG, Russell Crowe, who lays on the floor, gasping for breath, as the new kid, Paul Mescal, wields both a blade and an outstretched hand before him. The crowd are baying for blood. It's a battle to the death/ratings. But there is a world where instead of fighting, Paul Mescal and Russell Crowe skip off into the sunset, perhaps even going on to make sweet, sweet love. So Edinburgh, take our hand or lose your head. You choose. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. So we have some questions here, and we've got quite a few to get through, so we'll start straight away, but also we can get some questions from you guys that will come up here. So,
Wait a damn minute. Man came straight in like Jeremy Paxman. First of all, we've got to give this man his flowers. Make some noise for Kyle, everyone, please. So, obviously, my man is the front face of Ghosts on BBC. He's here in Edinburgh. You've got a show. Cool story, bro, improv show. We actually have been making, or we have worked together even from 7 years back.
Yeah.
We did our first sketch in a barbershop where I played Unknown P and you wanted to kill me. Before you even got into character, to be honest. So this is a nice little full circle moment. So
yeah.
There's our intro.
Thanks for having me. So yes, as I said, we've got a lot of questions to get through. So I'll start straight away.
Yes.
But first, I want to ask the question: why this topic? Why does it mean so much to you? And you talk a lot about risk, and it's quite a risk delivering this speech in front of an industry that you want to work in. So why this?
It's a great question. So the reality is like, if I came in this room right now, right, and I offended most of the people in here, let's say, for instance, even though in the room it felt like we were really on the same page, the reality is my career wouldn't end in this room because online is providing most of the opportunities anyway,
Yep.
right? If I then went on with my production company to just make a slate of YouTube shows, as it stands, I have more chance of success there than making television shows because of the state that television's in. So it's almost like a sort of Hail Mary move in that I would rather help television to resuscitate itself because I want to make TV than just turn my back and go, well, YouTube, the door's wide open anyway.
Right.
And like I said, you know, I owe so much to television. The industry taught me everything. In her introduction, Fatima was talking about the fast turnaround times. That's because I used to work on a massively understaffed magazine show on 4Music where we would have celebrities coming in and then last minute dropping out, and we would have to rewrite whole scripts and shows and just plan all these insane things. So I look at where I am now, and so much of that skill is built in TV. I don't want to see that mentor go, you know?
Yeah, great.
It's the same way that, you know, like Luke Skywalker wouldn't be celebrating the death of Yoda. Okay, forget I said that.
I don't know about them, but you lost me there. All right.
So
let's talk about traditional TV gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Why do you think that they're ignoring online talent? Do you think it's because it's a world they don't fully understand, or is there an inbuilt prejudice?
The thing is, to be a gatekeeper, I think that you have to earn your stripes. Most of the people that we see probably at the top of these channels really went through the rigmarole of television. They started as runners and researchers and built their way up and acquired so much skill. And so it is scary to suddenly feel the ground shifting beneath you, where the rules of engagement you learn are suddenly being thrown out the window. And that is a byproduct of just how rapidly our brains and the way that we consume things have become. There's an amazing article that came out recently which talks about the fact that I think it's either 20 or 28 million YouTube videos are uploaded every single day, right? There's no way we can watch them. And if we are on YouTube, we're just skimming through, to the point where the phrase has been coined that we're microdosing dementia to ourselves because of the fact that we are not training our brains to engage in anything. So the appetite of the consumer has changed so dramatically that it's hard even for gatekeepers to keep up. But I think instead of then going, right, let's scrap the rule book. I know that I've worked years to build up what those rules are, but the game's changed so dramatically. Instead of going, right, let's go back to base, develop a new plan, they're going, no, I'm going to stick to what I know and just close my eyes and hope it works. But the fact is, I think we're beyond the point of change. Pandora's box has been opened in terms of entertainment, and so it does require adapting. But as we know, adapting is scary.
Yeah. Great. A thing that stuck with me was the line, "It wouldn't work for our audience." And the fascinating contradiction when you have a creator in front of them who has curated their own dedicated audience. Who do you think their audience is? And why do you think broadcasters choose their audience over the audience that already comes with collaborating with online talent who already has a following?
I think that from my experience when I was in those rooms pitching, television seemed to think its audience were, much older, people who are going to sit down for 2 or 3 hours in front of the TV. And it was almost as if they were expecting that no young people do watch TV. They'd always resign themselves to the fact that young people don't watch TV. I'm working on a show at the moment with Channel 4, which was announced last week. It's a comedy series called Schooled. So there's a lot of kids on set, and I was asking them in preparation for this speech, like, do you lot watch TV? And they're like, yeah, we do watch TV, but whenever we turn it on, there's nothing for us. It's like they don't want us to watch TV. So it was this feeling of they had all in there, the commissioners we were speaking to, it felt like they'd already lost before we'd even had a chance to speak, because they were going, young people just don't watch the channel.
Right.
And they weren't, again, as I mentioned in the speech, there was no interest in me bringing my young audience into the channel. So I think that the audience of television is still up for grabs. Everyone talks about adolescence. I know it's a streamer, but we know that families sat around and watched it together. We know that young people watched it together. Did they watch it in the way that they usually consume terrestrial TV? I don't know, but they watched it. So it's kind of like, what tweaks can we make to make young people watch it, even if it's via their own rules?
Got you. One of the recurring ideas that you touch on is online takes a risk, online gets a reward. Now, I wonder if you can unpack the idea of risk. Are you meaning the type of shows themselves that are getting made by British broadcasters, or the risks that those broadcasters could be taking on new talent? What does risk mean to you, and what do you imagine that TV could be?
So one thing to bear in mind is that when I talk about risk, I'm not talking about making a show that literally causes Ofcom to have a heart attack, right? I remember when we were pitching Race Around Britain, we had ideas, some of which were just too outrageous. We were trying to build a statue of Churchill taking the knee for one episode. I wouldn't even be alive today if we had done that, And I respect their decision to cut that from the show. But it's more so allowing us, so risk is twofold. Number one, it's taking a risk on talent that doesn't match the traditional mold, right? So instead of someone who's been on TV for 20, 30 years, who can do the job, they can do auto cue, they can da-da-da. It's about maybe, for example, using that young documentarian who was pitching an idea to the BBC, right? You don't need to put them on the documentary straight away, but at least nurture the talent, take it somewhere. By their standards, he's a nobody, but you can make him a somebody by giving the skills and encouraging him, and then that feeds back into the YouTube content he's making. So risk definition number one is taking a risk on the talent that you choose. There's the familiar faces, there's the big faces online, and then there are the people with potential online. I'm talking especially between those latter two layers. And then, of course, it's a risk also on the formats we put out. You know, for example, I see shows now, and you can just tell, if a show does well, you can already hear the internal workings of commissioners thinking, we're going to run this until the wheels fall off. You enjoyed series 1, 2, 3, we're going to make it go to series 20. But why? You know, why do we bore our audience to tears before we just go, right, this has had a perfect run now, let's fill that slot with something new and something different. So it's taking a gamble on shows that are weird and are wacky. I remember hearing a story about, Baby Reindeer, and how when that came out, there was initial suspicion about how well it would perform, and even to the point of it trying to be buried. And then it surprised people. We didn't know it was going to be a hit, and it was. And it's like, that was, for me, a perfect example of what happens when you roll the dice and people just connect to something. The reality is, with this audience, we don't know what they like. We don't know what's going to connect. I know we hug onto statistics and data fiercely and firmly, but it's not always right, you know?
I don't know about you guys, but I certainly want to see that statue. You have made an impassioned defense for the power of DIY and building your own audience through digital, like you have. Do you feel like it's still possible to break through in the online space like you did, or is it now too saturated? Is the next Munya Chawawa likely to be drowned out in sheer volume of online content?
I mean, look, there's a lot of stuff on the internet, yeah? But I guarantee, if I pick anyone in the audience right now, I know there's some weird rabbit holes you go down. I know it. You know, I love videos of people ironing, yeah? I would watch a show called, like, Ironers Daily or whatever, just to watch them creases be smoothed out in 4K. I would happily do that. We are a very eclectic audience, and where online succeeds really well now, just by satisfying those niches, right? Television will try and cast the net as broadly as possible, which often means, you know, smoothing out some of those sort of quirks and creases I mentioned just now, to try and satisfy as many people as possible. But the reality is, we are so varied as a society and as a people now, that actually even niche groups have become quite broad groups, you know? So if you were to make a show that, I mentioned sort of the Francis Bourgeois example, where he records his trains and stuff like that. If you made a show with him about trains, I'm sure loads of people will watch it. If every train spotter in England watched it, that would be tons of people. Yeah. You know, there's more, that community is huge. They just don't have a place to flock to. So I guess it's providing those spaces of entertainment for niche groups as opposed to thinking, what's the biggest version of vanilla we can make? Because sometimes people don't want vanilla. Mm.
I think definitely trademark that Ironers Daily before Studio Lambert again. So let's imagine the telly industry bears this speech no warning and continues on just as it is. Do you think we're staring down the barrel of a lost generation of talent? By which I mean digital folks who don't get their shot on traditional platforms. Are their careers ultimately clipped? Or do they just keep doing their own thing while TV becomes more irrelevant?
Well, look, ultimately, like I said in the speech, I said that, is it boogeyman or bogeyman? I said boogeyman, but that just sounds like some sort of erratic dancer. I meant to say TV is the bogeyman.
Bogeyman, yeah.
And it's coming for you. And that is what, I believe that. I truly do believe that, you know, it's plodding towards its demise. And I think we all know that. That's why I didn't want to ham up too much the statistics, because if you're in this room, there's maybe a modicum of you that feels, yes, we know that TV's in trouble. You know, that the money's not there even to employ the amount of people we want to employ to make a show. You know, it's scary. I'm not speaking about this from a position of schadenfreude where I'm thinking, you know, TV said no to me once and now, you know, it's in decline. That doesn't bring me any joy, because some of my best memories and my skills, as I mentioned before, is in television. I want TV to do well. But what I am observing is the more we cling to, the more it clings to safety, the more irrelevant it becomes. Because, like I said, if 20 million videos are being uploaded to YouTube daily, how do you even begin to compete with that? Mm-hmm. You just have to start adapting quickly. We have some examples of it. So, for example, Channel 4.0 has been making a lot of noise where they're piloting lots of new format with internet talent. And I love to see that. I would then challenge them to go a step further and say, right, technically, I could watch this talent do these things on their channel, right? What I'm now watching is it being done under your name. What I would love is to see the bravery and the risk and the subversion and the anarchy of Channel 4 applied to that talent. You know, take them out on an extended travel log or scripted series or a deep undercover investigation, and infuse new talent with Channel 4's essence. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, like I said, it's collaboration, not cameos. Putting an internet celeb under your channel's name is not the same as giving them a show. It just isn't. That's just brownie points, and it's a very superficial level. And you know what? Talent aren't invested at that level because they are coming from a perspective where brands are going, can you hold our product and say your name? That's what it feels like TV's doing when it goes, cameo on this show, cameo on that show. We want to know you're serious, and that's when you get 110% from them.
Just off that, there's a question that's sort of more relevant to, yes, here it is, on the same sort of subject. There will be people in the audience today who will rebuff some of what we've been talking about and say, Munya, you're always on TV. You've been on Taskmaster, Cats, Have I Got News For You? Is that not an example of telly making a digital star, taking a digital star and trying to make them a face for their channel? Mm-hmm.
So, those are cameos, mm-hmm. not collaborations. You know, I don't have a say in Taskmaster. You know, 7-foot Greg James is not going to be taking production pointers from 5'3" Hobbit Munya, right? So, collaboration, not cameos. But also, I'll be very honest in the room and say, when lockdown finished, and I'd made all of these videos, and people had decided I was a comedian, first show I went on now is The Last Leg, live Friday night satire. I don't have a clue what I'm doing, right? Before lockdown, I was working in Red Bull as a producer. I don't know what to be a comedian means. I had no experience of working in the comedy space. I'm walking out there, they're saying, right, that's your A-cam. I'm saying, what, is A-cam a man or is it a camera? I don't know the terms, I don't know the jargon. Then when I went on to Taskmaster, right? I love doing the tasks, you know, running around and, you know, throwing rocks at things. That was fun, that was very freeing, and that felt very sort of mischievous, the same way as we would make content. But then again, back in the studio setting, I'm sat there with all these established comedians on a panel show in front of a live audience. I've got no idea what I'm meant to do in that situation because television has never even allowed me to take the progressive steps up to that level, you know, to know what it's like to be in a TV comedy environment. Thankfully, for whatever reason, maybe it's because I said Zimbabwe every 20 seconds, I did build a following from Taskmaster who just enjoyed who I was. But had that not been the way it had gone down, I could have been someone who worked up my digital following, had a shot on TV, and then just blew it, just by virtue of the fact that it was such an alien landscape to me. There was no sort of nurturing up through to those points. And, you know, I don't know whether it's schemes that can do that or there are ways you can introduce a person at a lower level before doing that, but it can't be that our relationship as digital talent is prove to us you're somebody, then we'll put you on the biggest shows, and if you flop, that's the end of your TV career. Yeah. There's got to be a bridge in between.
Yeah. On a more personal level, why does it matter so much to you to make TV?
So, if you open your phone now, during lockdown, there was really not that many people making videos. That was one of the joys of it, right? You could sit down, take 2 or 3 days to make a satirical masterpiece about Matt Hancock. I know that is a juxtaposition, but, you know, and you would put it out, and for 3 or 4 days, that would be the only thing people were talking about, because there was nothing else to watch in that online space. Instagram was just experimenting with letting you make a minute-long content. TikTok was in its infancy. People were still sort of lip-syncing to Conor Maynard. And it was like, now, comparative to that, if you have a viral video, you could have 11 million people watch something. All it takes for them to forget that video is this. Then there's the next video, then the next one. And all of a sudden, something that you may have worked on for such a long time and put so much creative energy into is just gone. It's just a fleeting moment. With television, think about that visual of the TV guide, those, you know, gold bars. There's only a set amount every day. There's only a set amount of slots. It's like a fistful of golden tickets in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Mm. If you have one of those slots, for that day, you're one of 11 shows that someone, somewhere thought was good enough to be on TV, good enough to show the whole nation, because most people still have some form of television, right? That is a feeling of, it's a feeling of something more limited, something more special and sacred, because it's an allocated space for you to be creative in, not elbowing on this busy internet highway. You know, everyone ultimately who puts effort into something just wants people to see it and engage with it. And as we know, social media is brilliant, but people aren't necessarily engaging with it, right? So that is why having Race Around Europe on television you know, once every week for 4 weeks would have felt like such an achievement, something frozen in time that you can point people back to and go, I was one of the shows good enough to make it onto TV.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy? When I spoke to the kids on set, that even when they said they don't watch TV, all of them wanted to be on TV. There's just something about how that sounds, what that means, the symbolism of it. Maybe it's something because we've grown up and our parents love TV, our generation's watching TV, so the next generation will know. But there is a certain status still attached to television.
That's a great answer. One of the defining qualities of you blowing up online was this idea of you being the fastest man on the internet. Munya never misses. Obviously, online comedy sketch gave you the space to react lightning fast to current events, almost exactly as they were happening. Coming into a traditional media space, the trade-off is the loss of that speed and try-anything mentality, replaced with endless rounds of development notes, drilling into concepts and every line in the script, but for a lasting and better crafted product. How do we create a better marriage of the advantages of both sides of the coin? Yeah.
So to me, I interpret that question as, if you have an idea and you're putting it on social media, I can just pick up my phone, film it, boom, it's on social media in 2 hours. Television's not like that. You've got to repo the lights, you've got to do this, you've got to storyboard this, that, and the other. It takes a long time. I don't think we should sacrifice the craft of good telly, but definitely there are things within television that we could upgrade to become quicker and to match the speed of online, right? So for example, every editor I speak to when I make TV is asking me, why am I still using Avid, this prehistoric 10,000 BC editing software? None of them know why they're using it. And they're like, it's so slow. But it's the way it's always been, right? It's about identifying things within television that have that similar sentiment behind them and figuring out how you can streamline. Also, part of taking risk is not necessarily the endless back and forth on, is it funny? Is it funny for our audience? Is it compliant? You know, we've got to trust the audience sometimes. You know, I've done things even in a branded space before where they've gone, hi Munya, absolutely love your characters. We just want you to bring full 100% Munya, all your characters, send us a script, go, boom. Send the script. Okay, could you take out this, and this character, all 5 of the jokes you've made, and then I'm just like, cool, so now it's just me reading my name. Oh, that's fantastic, Munya, yeah, go around and film it ASAP. It's like they strip out the essence, and then because it's your face, they think they've still done work with you. Like I said, it's about matching the speed and tone of creators and also letting them work in a fluid way. It would be interesting to see how much telly people know about the creative process, you know, of creators and how that mirrors theirs. So when I make a video, sit down in the mornings, huge brainstorm, we talk about what's on the money, what's funny, what's maybe too offensive. That's our sort of compliance, Ofcom side of things. We film the video. Then we watch it, we put together an initial edit, we go, right, does that work? Is the speed good here? Let's do some pickups. You know, send it around different people for a quality check. That's our sort of equivalent of the QC. And then we post, and then we see what the audience's reactions are. We go through those, we pick them up. We can go again the next hour if we need to. How do you apply something like that to TV without losing the craft? That's a challenge, I admit, but is that a goal most channels have right now to figure out that challenge? I don't know.
Can you tell us about a new online creator or comedian who you're really excited about? Give us a name that the industry should be paying attention to.
That's a really good question. So, like I mentioned to you, I have quite weird niches. One person I am going to shout out, and he doesn't need me to shout him out at all, but he's a fantastic example of a YouTube personality who rocked people in the same scale as when a national treasure retires on television. So it's a channel called The Outdoor Boys, right? And it's this like really nerdy, lanky dude. You know the guy? I think his name's, why have I forgotten his name? Is it Nate? It's like one syllable name, like Mark, Dave, or something like that. Anyway, he's a legend and I love him. He takes his kid, he lives in Alaska, he takes his kids out, and he just does survival videos, fishing, camping, cooking, this, that, and the other. And it's formatted. So he'll be, so it's Luke. So Luke here from The Outdoor Boys, he starts, he gives you the upfront trailer, and then he just goes on this adventure. And every week, week after week, millions of people would tune in. And he wouldn't even allow comments on the videos because his kids were in the videos. So he didn't even have audience feedback. All he had was an idea of a format he wanted to do. And he rolled it out for years. And this year he went, I'm having to retire the channel, man, because I just want to spend time with my kids. And honestly, it was like a week of mourning for us. We were watching a combination of sort of David Attenborough, Travelog, Bob Mortimer Fishing Show, all rolled into one. He's an example of, not a young creator, but somebody who really mastered the TV format. I love a lot of sketch comedians. I love people like, Al Nash. I love people like Andrea Vowles. These are all people who are popping up in scripted, but not necessarily getting any big shots. I look through the content of my favorite creators and I see them saying, it's been really slow for work. The stuff's slowing down. Their ideas are getting turned away. Even yourself, Kyle, you've been in the game for how long now? I've watched you on set. You're a pro. I'm waiting to see your big shot. I saw the Blap. I thought the Blap was amazing, but where's the sketch show? Pay me later, bro.
Now, we are out of time, but I do think this question is very important.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what you're working on next, and what shows are you hoping to be able to make in collaboration with British broadcasters, and how does that embody the idea of risk?
Yeah. So, scripted comedy show called Schooled is, we're filming it. I came from set yesterday. I'm really excited for that. It's a chance, finally, for me to showcase some of the comedy skills I've been trying to build for the last 7 years on screen in a scripted show. I have my own script, which is currently sat with the commissioning gods. We've done the 2-3 years back and forth, writing notes, being pulverized into oblivion by Microsoft Word documents and Redline docs. That's with the commissioning gods. Will it be made? I don't know. Is it the craziest thing I could conceive in my brain? Yes, absolutely. And I bet any money afterwards, if we speak together in the foyer and I tell you one of the scenes from the shows, you will go, I would love to see this show made. So that's one thing. And then I have my slate of sort of unscripted format ideas where, it's just trying to think as widely and broadly as possible and think what would be most surprising to an audience. That's just in rotation all the time. So again, just like you, part of me is waiting for that hook. I've got loads of stuff that I'm excited about with my own production company, stuff that we're working on in the online space. But as you know, my first love's TV, so I would love one of those shows to get made for sure.
Hope to see it. And one question from the audience. What helps you stay authentic as a person of colour in spaces where you might not always see yourself represented?
Well, for me, comedy is has always been a really important vehicle for any message you want to put across. In today's climate, especially with certain presidents, there has been a sort of bat signal in the air that goes, right, guys, you know that whole diversity thing we're doing? Yeah, you can stop now, right? And you can see that trickling into certain policies and structures and institutions. However, there are some universal languages, one of which is comedy, and I therefore will use comedy as a means to discuss things like class or race or these kinds of things which, if delivered at point blank, people usually shut down to. So I suppose it's all about the way in which you tell stories. It's having to push yourself to tell a story in a more creative way that people have to sort of bury within the story to find what you're actually telling them. It's not necessarily something we should do, but it's the approach that's worked best for me. And it's a very much like a Trojan horse approach. Although I always use this analogy, and I'm not sure it's entirely correct. I always say if you want someone to eat medicine, you have to put it in lasagna, because everyone loves lasagna. Was that better or worse than the Yoda thing? I don't know.
It's made me hungry, so... Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. But can you please give a massive round of applause to Munya Chawawa?
Thank you. And Kyle as well.